Washington Journal continues.
It was on the floor of the House of Representatives where our next guest went to the floor and called for the impeachment of President Trump. Here's a bit of that statement.
I rise today with a sense of responsibility and duty to the people who have elected me, a sense of duty to this country, a sense of duty to the Constitution of the United States of America. I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America for obstruction of justice.
Our guest is Representative Al Green, Democrat from Texas, and serves the city of Houston. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
What led you to believe that this was the right thing to do?
Well, first, if I may, let me just tell you this. I think it's important. This is not something that I wanted to do. It's something that I feel compelled to do. And I feel that I must do this because the president has obstructed justice. When the president fired the FBI director who was investigating him and then went on to tweet what might be considered some threats or some strong admonitions, that was obstruction of justice. Now, there are many other things that are occurring, and these things may be evidence to further the finding of obstruction of justice. But the president did it. And by the way, the president confessed on national TV. So there's no need to investigate to determine what the president said. He confessed on national TV with Mr. Lester Holt.
And so when it comes to the reaction from Democrats, they heard the same things you said the president said as far as what he said about Mr. Comey and the like. They've said that maybe impeachment isn't the time for it yet and more investigation is needed even before they make that decision. How do you square with that?
Well, I don't square with Democrats because this is not about Democrats. It's about the democracy. It's about government of the people, by the people, for the people. And I don't concern myself with the opinions of Republicans because it's not about the Republicans, it's about the republic. And what Franklin said when he told us that you have a republic if you can keep it. So this is about keeping that republic. And I am a voice in the wilderness. I understand that I may stand alone, but I still stand because the president has obstructed justice.
When it comes to this idea of obstruction of justice, you laid out your case. The Harvard Law professor Alex Whiting had this to say about obstruction of justice. He said this, he said, the more difficult issue will be proved that Mr. Trump's intent. A corrupt intent requires proof that Mr. Trump acted with an improper purpose and intent to obstruct the investigation as opposed to more benign lawful intent. Intent can be proven by both direct evidence and by circumstantial evidence. To determine intent, prosecutors will look at the available evidence concerning the acts themselves, but also Mr. Trump's statements and conduct before and after the acts. So you're saying with that in mind, what the president has said to your mind is obstruction of justice.
Yes, sir. And I think it's also important to do this, to separate the collusion from the obstruction of justice, because the collusion does require a lot of investigation, and that should go on. And I hope that it will come to fruition in an appropriate way. But the obstruction of justice has to do with the president's own words. We need not look beyond what he has said. I indicated he confessed when he said that he was doing it because of the investigation. That's a pretty significant thing for a president to say. And then to go on and tweet out some language that might be intimidating was in furtherance of this act. So it's pretty clear that he did it. Now, for those who are looking for a definition of obstruction of justice, they might go to 18 USC 1501 through 1507, and you will find a proper definition that will take in consideration the acts of the president such that they can come to their own conclusions.
Our guest is with us to talk about his effort and what he said and the reaction he's getting from that. If you want to ask him questions, 202-748-8000 for Democrats, 202-748-8001 for Republicans, 202-748-8002 for Independents, and you can tweet us at C-SPAN WJ. What has been the reaction? And particularly it was on your Facebook page that you posted some statements made by your constituents. Can you paraphrase what went on?
Well, are you talking about the ugly phone calls?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I don't know that they were my constituents. That's why I had to ask. Persons have made threats. They have said some very ugly things. And it's my opinion that you cannot hide hate. You have to expose it. Because there are a good many people who candidly, sir, do not believe that the level of ugliness exists that I have to cope with and that persons of color have to cope with, immigrants have to cope with, LGBTQ have to cope with. So we have to expose it so that people can see that there is a reality that some people don't experience but that others have to live with. So this is why we expose it. And what was said was, in essence, we will murder you. We will murder you. Lynch you is what was said. But lynching is murder. Give you a trial before we hang you and lynch you. These are the kinds of vile statements that we have to live with. Doesn't matter if you're the head of you're the CEO of a major corporation, or if you're one of 435 members of Congress. People somehow believe that they can intimidate you with the threat of lynching. We need to let people know. We also have to do this. We have to protect people in these congressional offices. There are young people working there, young staffers. Some of the people are still in high school, they're interns, and they shouldn't have to tolerate some of the ugliness that we have to endure. But we signed up for the job and we're going to do the job. We will not be turned around because of intimidation. This will in no way thwart our efforts to move forward. We will move forward, and as a matter of fact, I am currently drafting, if you will, articles of impeachment. Every member of Congress has the right to file a privileged resolution for impeachment, and it has to be heard within 2 legislative days. I'm a member of Congress. I'm crafting it, but I'm not doing it alone. I have constitutional scholars who will be working with me, and at some point we'll wait to see what others will do. And if no one else does, the president has committed an impeachable act, and I will take it upon myself to move forward with this. That is what I have said. That is what I will do.
When do you expect to do that?
I don't have an acid test for the introduction of the resolution. What I have said is I'd like to see the country weigh in on this. The people should weigh in. This is a participatory democracy. People have to participate not only on election day, but on other occasions when democracy is at risk. So this is a time for people to participate. We had an impeachment town hall meeting in my district. I think people should do this. Weigh in. Let your representatives know where you stand on this issue. When the will of the people is properly expressed, the will of Congress will change. About 48% of the American people think that the president should be impeached currently. There is a strong, sound, solid plurality for impeachment.
Our guest, Representative Al Green, Democrat from Texas, serves the 9th District, including the city of Houston. We have phone calls lined up for you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Our first one is from Sherry, and Sherry is in Oklahoma City on our line for Democrats. Sherry, you're on with our guest. Good morning.
Good morning. I listened to the senator from Florida this morning, and he was making a emphatic call, a statement about the importance of the leaks, and he wanted the people who were leaking out information about what's going on in the White House to go directly to the investigating agencies. But I am concerned about if that happens, if President Trump is allowed to continue to circumvent law by going and calling on these investigating entities to quash the investigation, if it's going to be lost because he's being able to be given so much leeway in killing the law, which is very, very frightening, because once we lose the law that protects us, then the country cannot sustain. We will not be able to sustain this democracy.
Okay, Sherry, we'll let our guest respond.
Yes, the lady makes an important point. We live in a country where it is believed that no person is beneath the law, that the law will protect people. But we also believe that no person should be above the law. That means that even the President of the United States, if he commits obstruction of justice, he's got to come before the bar of justice, which is the U.S. House of Representatives. Impeachment does not mean that the president will be removed from office. Impeachment simply means that he will be charged. The Senate has the trial. The House brings the charges. If he is tried in the Senate, all of these issues about who said what can be resolved. because the Senate will have subpoena power, and even the president himself can be required to give testimony. This is the process that Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution allows us to engage in when we have facts that constitute obstruction of justice.
Independent line, Jason from Alabama.
Yes. My question is, if President Trump actually did something wrong, where's the proof in it? I could understand if y'all actually had proof. Now, if he concluded with the Russians, I could see y'all doing impeachment or something. But, as far as him just running his mouth off, he's not a politician. He's a common folk businessman who's used to just running his mouth off. Unlike, Schumer and other people who are running their mouth off slandering people with no proof. Now, they should be against the law. Like, I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I don't care either which way. But to have someone slander someone else's name with no proof whatsoever, I'm hearing it on the news all the time, and I see Democrats slandering like crazy, and they show no proof.
Okay, caller, thanks.
This is a very good point that you have made, sir. It affords me the opportunity to explain that the president's oral representations, coupled with his overt manifestations, are what would constitute the proof necessary. The president doesn't just run off his mouth. He not only says that he fired the director, but he said he fired him because of the investigation. Now, the investigation and the collusion, that's a separate issue to be investigated separately. But the obstruction of justice occurred when the president acted. It's not just that he talked, sir. He did act. He did fire the director of the FBI. He did do so because the director was investigating him, and he went on to intimidate with a tweet about the recordings that may or may not exist. That constitutes obstruction of justice. Now, there'll be some other things that will be called to our attention. The memo from Mr. Comey, that's secondary evidence. And then the latest attempts to encourage people to do something that was inappropriate, that might be tertiary evidence. And then you might have a number of other things that have occurred that would be quaternary evidence. But the primary evidence occurred when the president fired the director of the FBI who was investigating him.
Republican line from Maryland. Bonnie, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. And yes, I was a diehard Republican till this. Anyway, my point is, why spend all of this money when he can't be prosecuted? And to me, the thing that proves to me that he is doing it all for him, you had the Kushners in China selling citizenship to the highest bidder for their hotel in New Jersey. You have his daughter on every trip with him while he's talking and on diverting everybody's attention. She's making deals with every country, like in Saudi Arabia. He just went there. He made deals with them that has something to do with his close ties. And it's all, he doesn't care about the people. All he's in it for is the money. They need to take and follow the money.
Well, I thank you, ma'am. Impeachment is the means by which the president can be brought before the bar of justice. You use the term prosecuted. The president would be impeached first, and then he would be tried in the Senate. This is a proper process. As a matter of fact, ma'am, it is the way a president is called to justice, because a president's not going to be indicted and taken into a court of law. It has never happened. My suspicion is that it won't. A president is first impeached, and then after impeachment tried, and then after tried, extricated from his office. And after extrication, then there can be a follow-up with reference to some sort of criminal prosecution.
How many Democrats have come to you since your statement last week and said, we support you in this?
I would prefer not to talk about the kindness of my colleagues. I have not asked one person to support my endeavor. I have said this is a matter of conscience, and when the resolution is presented, people will have an opportunity to vote on it. I cannot assure anybody that there will be any number of people voting for it, but I can say this: there will be at least one vote for impeachment, and I will stand alone, and I will stand with history. I know that this is clearly a case of obstruction of justice, and I will stand on the law and the facts.
Representative Al Green with us from Wisconsin, Democrats line. Martin, go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you for your service, Congressman.
Thank you, sir.
I am a recently retired tradesman, a white male, and a lifetime supporter of all things Democrat. And I will just say, you're not representing me as a Democrat. It's quite embarrassing. You're throwing out impeachment and then hiding behind, the LGBT, people of color. What happened to supporting the white middle class? You seem to be absorbed in this identity politic thing, and this whole impeachment is just part of that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to respond, sir. And I assure you, I have no intentionality with reference to insulting you or the white middle class. I'm an integrationist. I believe that every person ought to succeed on his merits or fail on his or her demerits. I believe that this is a country that is diverse, and that diversity ought to be celebrated. I believe that that diversity crosses all lines, especially the color line. I believe we ought to have an inclusive society. I believe that we ought to stand for liberty and justice for all. I believe that in this country, no one is above the law, which is why I do what I do. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with Democrats. It's about democracy. It has nothing to do with Republicans. It's about the republic. It has everything to do with the president not being above the law and being brought before the bar of justice. So if I have offended you, I really, sincerely don't want you to be offended and would extend an apology to you, but this must continue. I'm sorry. I really am, but it must continue.
That columnist Steve Chapman, who writes for several newspapers, said this about this topic of impeachment. He said, forcing a president from office is among the gravest tasks members of Congress can undertake. He goes on to say, to attempt it with so many questions yet unanswered would look like partisan revenge, not just against Trump, but against the people who voted for him.
Well, the law doesn't grant an exception because of the appearances that may be in place. I regret that people would take this position that there is some appearance of impropriety by following the Constitution. But I do say this, I'm concerned about how it looks, which is why I consistently say it's not about Democrats or Republicans. But as one of 435 members of the House, we are split between Republicans and Democrats. If an impeachment resolution is brought by a Republican, the same statement can be made. If it's brought by a Democrat, the same statement can be made. So I don't know how you escape these ostensible representations. I only know this: the Constitution does not make an exception for these kinds of appearances. It says that if you commit obstruction of justice, Article 2, Section 4, not those exact words, talking about high crimes and misdemeanors, but if you commit obstruction of justice, which is a high crime or misdemeanor, then you can be brought before the House. It is one of the most solemn responsibilities that we have as members of Congress. This is why I don't do it lightly. This is why I'm not sought to ask other members to join this, what I believe to be an honorable effort. I let them make their own decisions. And at some point we will vote. Now we can vote based upon something that the Judiciary Committee brings before the House, or we can vote based upon something that another member brings before the House, or we can vote based upon what and I don't like using personal pronouns, but what I will bring before the House. My mother taught me to say we most of the time, and I try. But in this case, I am the voice in the wilderness, and I will do it. I have no fear. There is no fear, and because it's not about the things that people like to use as sometimes what I would call sophisticated sophistry. It's not about that. It really isn't.
From our independent line from Maryland, Robert, go ahead.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Better than I deserve, sir. I have the gift of life. I can only appreciate and celebrate the fact that I've been blessed with it. Thank you so much.
Yes, Congressman. Look, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and a lot of friends of mine died to preserve the principles of this country. St. Paul says in Romans, the first chapter of the Roman Empire, proclaiming themselves to be wise, they became fools, and God gave them over to reprobate mind. Reprobate, defined by the dictionary, means unprincipled, doomed for damnation. What I see happening to my great democracy, greed is the instigator for the destruction here. And until our politicians take control back of our government, away from these corporate vultures and people like Mr. Trump, we will be, just like the Roman Empire, doomed for destruction.
Thanks, caller.
Let me just say to the caller, I would invite you to peruse a poem written by J. Patrick Kinney. It's styled The Cold Within. The Cold Within. If you have time later on today, you might catch the floor of the House of Representatives. I plan to address the cold within. It speaks to many of the circumstances that we will have to cope with. It speaks to cupidity, not stupidity, cupidity, religiosity, extreme religiosity. It speaks to the things that are causing many of the circumstances that we have to cope with. So I invite you to tune in. C-SPAN will cover the House floor, and sometime after 10 o'clock today, I plan to have a 5-minute statement.
Do you plan to follow up then on this idea of impeachment, which you brought up today?
Oh, I absolutely plan to, but I will share with you that today I have to thank people for the many kind things that they've said and done, given some of the ugly things that have been said and done. So I will thank people who have approached me, many of them very conservative, who do not believe in impeachment, but they also don't believe in this notion of threatening people with lynching. Many of them are liberal, but I want to thank people for what they've done. Little about impeachment, a lot about circumstances in the world, especially in lieu of what happened in Britain. Yes, sir.
Representative Al Green, Democrat from Texas, serves Houston in the 9th District. Thank you for coming on.
It was my honor to be with you, sir. Thank you.
We will take a break and then